Welcome back to the channel, Sheepdogs. Before we go any further with this channel, I have to talk about the rape myth culture. Knowing and understanding the rape myth culture makes you a better asset, in my opinion, to the criminal justice system, because you are more prepared to combat against this disgusting culture in our society that has such a tremendous effect upon victims of sexual assault. I started this channel to be used as a tool to educate and especially instill passion into each and every one of you. By educating yourself and not allowing yourself to remain ignorant towards every aspect of what your job entails, this is the first step on combating against the rape myth culture. Think about it. Law enforcement is the gatekeeper to the criminal justice system. If you're mediocre, or if you're ignorant towards your own occupation, you are helping this toxic culture survive. And I'm going to explain why. So with that, let's go. So first and foremost, why should we care about victimology? In my opinion, in order to be truly effective at your job, you have to understand every single element that goes into being a victim of a crime. These men and women have endured the most horrific crime against their body, mentally and physically, with the sexual assault. You have to understand why they appear to be illogical, why they have delayed reported. And more importantly, the more you know about victimology, the more you realize that false reporting is extremely exaggerated by those who have no idea what they're talking about. Think about it. Victims of sexual assault don't just blatantly report because nothing ever happened. False reporting, according to literature, is at 0.5 to 2% of victims who bald-faced lie about what happened to them. So 98% of the men and women that are out there who report sexual assault, something happened to them. So cast away the myths that we're going to talk about and truly understand what victimology is all about. So within the study of victimology, I like to use the routine activities theory because it really starts to explain why victims are victims, because it focuses on the subject and brings them back into the equation. Too many times have I seen police officers solely focus in on the victim and how ridiculous their story sounds, or how they just focus in on the victim only and then never actually investigate the subject. So this routine activities theory, what it does is that it brings the focus back to the offender. These two criminologists, they theorize that it takes three elements for a crime to occur. 1, a motivated offender. 2, a suitable target. And 3, lack of a capable guardian. Once all those three intersect, bam, a crime occurs. So who exactly can be an offender? Can anybody be an offender? What happens if you have so much money? What happens if you have all this rank? Can you be an offender? Well, of course you can. Take 1 second and I want you to figure out which 3 of these pictures are not offenders. Okay, I'm going to circle the non-offenders and see how you did. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, anybody can be an offender. Now, in my opinion, an offender becomes motivated when they find a suitable target that has a weakness. In my experience with victims, a lot of them, their weakness comes in the form of alcohol use. That offender probably wasn't motivated until they saw their victim drink. Once they saw them drink, then they became motivated because they knew they'd be a suitable target for them to take advantage over. So who can be a suitable target? Well, obviously, anybody can be a victim of a crime. Look at all of these pictures. They're all having a great time. Now, the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the motivated offenders are watching their victims get intoxicated or get to a place where they can't take care of themselves, and then they swoop down upon them and take advantage of them. Each one of these men and women in these photographs, it is their right as a human being to drink alcohol if they want to. It is our job to protect them from offenders who are going to offend against them because of what they put themselves into. It is not their fault. Anybody is allowed to drink alcohol if they want to, especially if they're of age. It is not right for somebody to look at that and take advantage of them because they can't do a gosh darn thing about it, because they are unconscious or they are just too intoxicated to consent. So who or what is a capable guardian? And that is essentially anything that makes you a harder target. Because a vast majority of the time, no rapist is going to rape you in the middle of a crowd. What they're going to do, the motivated offender is going to get their victim. They're going to see the weakness, and they're going to get them isolated away from society. They're going to lead them away where they then can offend upon them without interruption. So anybody that can make you a harder target, that is the ultimate goal of what a capable guardian means. So the point behind the routine activities theory is to really understand how the victim became a victim, how the motivated offender became motivated, why he or she chose their victim, and then how to make that victim the next time a harder target when the subject then looks at them and says, I just can't risk it, and they move on from it. That is the whole point of victimology, understanding why they are victims and then helping those in the future not become victims. So understanding the basics of victimology, let's go ahead and start defining the rape myth culture. Prejudicial, stereotyped, and false beliefs about sexual assault, rapists, and rape victims all feed and contribute to the rape myth culture, keeping it alive. Some common myths that I wrote down is like, if someone gets really drunk, it's their own fault if they end up getting raped. They should have kept themselves safe. That is ridiculous. Anybody, like I've said before, is allowed to drink any alcohol they want. It's their body, it's their choice if they're of age. What we cannot do is that we cannot blame them for wanting to do something that we're all given the right to United States citizens. Another myth. If someone doesn't have bruises, did not scream, or try to fight off their attacker, then it wasn't rape. Again, that's ridiculous. That is a complete myth. Think about it. If somebody is completely unconscious, are they going to have contusions? Are they going to scream? Obviously not. They are unconscious and their muscles are relaxed. So there's going to be no bruises. There's going to be no tearing. And if they don't scream, think about it. Have you ever been sexually assaulted? So let's get graphic just for 1 second. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine. I want you to listen to my voice. I want you to lay on your stomach. Then I want you to know that you cannot move. The only thing that you can do is listen to me, smell me, taste me, and hear me. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip down your pants. Whether you're a man or a female, it doesn't matter. Then I want you to imagine me jamming my index finger into one of your orifices, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Do you have any idea what that's like? And you can't do nothing about it. You just have to sit there and listen and smell and taste everything that's going on with you. So if I'm holding a gun to your head, are you going to scream? No, because you want to live. So get over the fact that if they try to fight out their attacker or they don't have contusions, that is all freaking myths. So get over it. Next, we often serve to excuse sexual aggression, create hostility towards the victims, and then the biased criminal prosecution. Here are some common excuses. Women asked for it and how they dressed. That is a gosh darn excuse. We are then putting it all upon the victim because it's their fault, which is typical victim blaming. You can dress any way you want to. It does not give anybody permission to sexually assault you. Or let's say they took too long to report it, so they must be lying. Do you have any idea what it feels like to be sexually assaulted? Go back to my original scenario where you're laying on the ground and there's nothing you can do. There's humility. There's powerlessness. You have no control of what's going over to you because somebody is bigger and stronger than you. Do you have any idea what that feels like? You probably don't. And for those you do, God bless you because you have survived. The problem that we have in our society is that because of the false beliefs that maybe 50% of our society still believes in, and the stereotypes, and then we excuse the sexual aggression, which creates hostility towards victims, it becomes then normalized in our society. And that is detrimental to what we're trying to overcome. The more normalized it is, the more that everything is start to be excused, and then as well as we start placing the blame back upon the victim, and then it creates this vicious cycle where we then start blaming the victims over and over. Okay, so this is where I'm afraid I might lose some of you. Now, let me just be blunt. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. All I care about is the criminal justice system. Now, I must use Donald Trump because he's a prime example of what it's like for a predator to be powerful. The more powerful position that a predator is in, the more that either society excuses them or rationalizes it or normalizes it. So let's take a look. In 2016, when Trump was running for president, a videotape came out of him using some really crude language. So let's take a look.
A just-released tape from 11 years ago on which Donald Trump can be heard making some extremely crude comments about himself and women.
She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where there's some nice furniture. I took out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony everything. She's totally changed her look.
She's your girl's hot as in the purple.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes, the Donald has scored.
Whoa.
Oh, my man. Wait, you got to look at me when you get out of your
That is very
You give me the thumbs
Look
up.
at you. You are a You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the I can do anything.
You those legs. All I can see is the legs.
No, it looks good.
Come on, shorty.
Oh, nice legs, huh?
Oof, get out of the way, honey. That's good legs. Go ahead.
It's always good if you don't fall out of the bus. Like Ford, Gerald Ford, remember?
Down below. Pull the hound.
Hello, how are you? Hi.
Trump, how are
nice seeing you.
Pleasure
Terrific.
to meet you.
Terrific. You know Billy Bush?
How are you?
Nice to see you. How you doing,
Very
Ariane?
good.
I'm doing very well, thank you. Are you ready to be a soap star?
We're ready. Let's go. Make me a soap star.
So what you heard and saw is Billy Bush and Donald Trump talking about women, and then they roll up on the bus, and then they see the woman that's dressed in purple, and they start talking really crudely about women in general. Then Donald Trump kind of gives a roadmap on what he does to women he thinks is pretty. He basically sexually assaults them at will, and there's nothing they can do about it because he's a celebrity, and he can do what he wants. So he gave a roadmap, what he did, and then soon after this aired, women started coming forward telling stories about what he did to them. Some were rape, some were sexual assault, some were sexual batteries. But, I mean, the number is so high, you immediately can't discount all the women because he just gave a roadmap what he did, and so therefore their testimony fits exactly what he's talking about. So you would think that once all these women would come forward, you would immediately discount it, which he did, and I want you to listen to how he discounted it and see what you think.
Happening to our country. Think of what's happened. I don't know who these people are. I look on television. I think it's a disgusting thing, and it's being pushed. They have no witnesses. There's nobody around. They just come out. Some are doing it for probably a little fame. They get some free fame. It's a total setup. One came out recently where I was sitting alone in some club. I really don't sit alone that much. Honestly, folks, I don't think I sit alone. I go in with groups of people. I was sitting alone by myself, like this. And then I went, wow. To somebody.
So obviously, we're dealing with somebody that's an extreme narcissist. So what he does first is that he politicizes it, meaning that these women only came forward because they're trying to set him up and ruin his run for presidency. Two, then the ego starts to draw out of him, and he says that, I was in a club alone, and I'm never in a club alone. Well, obviously, you're not going to sexually assault somebody when you're in a crowd. So therefore, he immediately discounts that he's ever alone, which is just crazy. So the point is that imagine if your offender is a really rich person or a powerful person or a very popular person. Immediately society starts to discount it, and that's what we have to fight against. Because how many women does it take in order for people to feel comfortable enough that maybe this person is a predator? So listen to society and see what they think about the scenario, what they just heard.
Okay with a presidential candidate bragging about sexual assault. Wait for it.
I think it's just locker room talk. There's really,
What does that mean?
Guys in the bar talk that way when they see a pretty girl. What are you going to say?
I've heard worse about men talking about girls, women, so...
Are you talking about other like presidential candidates like Mondale? Or,
Yes.
Okay.
It's locker room talk. That's what boys do. He didn't do it.
Well, I don't talk like that.
Well,
Do you have any children?
I do.
Do they talk like that?
No, they don't.
So not those boys.
Well, no, not
Do you have a
those
husband?
boys. I do.
Does he talk like that?
No.
Well, not that boy.
No.
Is that how you talk?
Well, no, but I feel like he says
Is that
like,
how your dad talks?
well, no, but
Is that like your pastor talks?
no, not
So
necessarily.
who talks like that?
Well, obviously Donald Trump.
It was stupid bragging men talk. Men brag.
We brag, right? You brag a bit, right?
So that was a little taste of what society does. They normalize it, they rationalize it, but when the reporter then spins it back and says, well, does your husband talk like that? Or do you talk like that? And people are, well, no, I don't. See, that's the problem. See, all of this rationalization and normalization is feeding into the rape myth culture, which generates negative attitudes towards current and future victims of sexual assault, especially women. As you can see here, let's look at this. So I follow the NBA and the WNBA on my Facebook feed, and in 2017 I was scrolling through and the NBA posted that the WNBA finals were starting. Look at all of the comments that were left because these women were starting the NBA finals. This is just a fraction of the comments that were posted, and all of them were demeaning and ugly. Does anybody have any idea what it takes to be a professional basketball player? These women have worked their ass off to be where they are, and look at what society does. They tear them down at any given moment. If that's not good enough, then in 2020, it continues to happen again in our society, where Sarah Fuller is asked, because she's a soccer player, she's asked to go and kick for the Vanderbilt football team. And so what happens? Look at all the comments that start attacking her. She's no Justin Tucker, and then, she's not getting hit. That's not the point. The point is that a woman was asked to play football, and look what the reaction is. Instead of being celebrated, she's tore down because she's a woman. That in itself, ladies and gentlemen, feeds into the rape myth culture. We have to start condoning the language and the behavior of society. So how do we start the educational process with society and try to correct the wrong into the right? Well, lucky for us, we have the U.S. military. The U.S. military is a big, gigantic pool of is a test bed, meaning that we're trying to eliminate sexual assaults from the military, and those models can then be used for society, in theory, right? And so we're going to look at The Invisible War. The Invisible War is a documentary that was filmed in 2012, and it really looks at the horrific, indecent language and sexual assault and rape inside the military and just how detrimental it is. So let's take a look at what the military is trying to accomplish.
We've implemented training at each and every level of military service. From the moment they enter the service in basic training, they're given that. And our campaign consists of a series of posters that are actually training tools, and each of those posters has a different focus. But one of the things that we do in our prevention strategy is to focus on bystander intervention, and in that strategy and in that training, we ask for each soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine to be aware of what sexual assault is and how to prevent it.
How would you characterize the typical sex offender?
Well, if I look at our data from the Department of Defense, it's young people that are ages 18 to 24, 25.
Would you say that most of them are serial rapists?
I don't have data one way or the other to determine that.
And what percentage of the rapes do you think are caused by serial predators?
I don't have any numbers. I don't know I don't think we collect that type of data.
There's been studies done that people who enter the military are twice as likely to have committed rape as their equivalent population in the civilian world.
I'm not aware of that study. My area of expertise focuses primarily on prevention and victim care.
But wouldn't prevention include focusing on the perpetrators?
So part of the problem is that I'm sure Dr. Whitley's resume looks fantastic. However, she has a PhD in education, and that's it. She's not a criminologist. She knows nothing about victimology. She knows nothing about the crime of rape. Especially, she knows nothing about indecent language. So she is trying to elicit a few key words here and there to make it look great on paper, but in reality, it's not working. Now, what I believe is a good start is try to get bystander intervention, meaning she or they are trying to get society bought into the problem. And that's the first step. That's actually pretty good. But let's look at some victims of crime and see what they think of the training that Dr. Whitley's talking about.
SARC is a joke. The things that they say are ignored or they're made fun of.
Turn the other cheek is a thing of the past. Up close and real when they try to harass. So when they there in the dark and the predator persists, step up in his face, you can tell him this. We stand, we fight, intervene.
It might be a video or 20 slides. It's like a lot of military training where it's the once a year check in the box.
Motivate, you need to intervene,
Sapro can't fix anything.
You walking back alone?
Yeah, it's just a short walk to my chew.
All right.
And all the money seems to be spent on advertising, which is just rife with victim blaming.
What's your name? Hey, come here. Come here, let me talk to you for a sec. I just want to talk to you. Oh, are you okay?
No, there's this guy, he grabbed me.
Why are you by yourself? Where's your buddy?
I didn't think I needed one.
Sexual assault is preventable. Are you doing your part?
So that last video is actually a real video that the Army produced, and it was rifled with victim blaming. So the people at SAPRO, the people that are in charge of making these videos to prevent sexual assaults and sexual harassment, just now blamed every single victim for their crime. So you can see how serious this problem is. When the higher echelon at the Pentagon can't get it right, then how can anybody at the unit level get it right? So this is part of the problem. How we train. So let's look at how we train. So as soon as a new recruit comes into the branch of service they're serving in, let's say the Army for example, they're immediately given the values for that branch. In the Army, the acronym is leadership. So they are sat down, they are force-fed it, and they are demanded that they follow it. But as you can see, it's usually day one, they're sleep deprived, and they might not be fully bought in because of how they've been raised. That is part of the problem. You can talk all that you want, but if they're not fully bought in, they don't really care and they don't really get it unless peer society then starts to force them to change. But that's where we need to go. Society needs to force change. So looking at our periods of development, by the time you hit the armed forces or by the time you hit college, it might be too late because look at the imprint period, up to the age of 7. You absorb everything around us and you accept much of it what is true as well as a sense of right and wrong, good and bad. Then the modeling period, between the ages of 8 and 13, we start to copy people, often our parents, but if the parents are absent, then we are copying those that are more around us, family members, or unfortunately our friends, and how they're raised by their parents. Rather than blind acceptance of their values, we tend to practice learned behavior to see how our values feel. Then the socialization period between 13 and 21. So at that very tippy age where we start to go into the armed forces, we are very largely influenced by our peers. So then we start to develop as individuals. We look for ways to get away from early programming. Now we start turning to people more like us. So as you can see, by the time we hit the military, it is more than likely too late to learn new values, what the Army is thinking, oh, we're going to change them into these model citizens. And that's not accurate because then the morals and the values are already instilled in them. So maybe they lack the values that we want them to have. And so when they start offending against society members inside their own branch, it's like we're baffled. We don't know what's going on and how to stop it. So typically the Army does knee-jerk reactions. So now we're going to shove a field grade officer in front of the camera, put two women beside him, and I want you to listen to see if he actually genuinely buys into what he's saying.
Team, Double Eagle 6, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Got some of our teammates here. I want to talk about Sharp. I got the experts right with me right now. I got Major Rodriguez. I got Master Sergeant Graves. They're my teammates at this level. You all have teammates at every echelon in America's Army Reserve to make sure in any given day you understand your responsibilities. A couple of key ones for commanders all the way up and down the chain of command. Make sure, number one, you got a policy in place. You've signed it yourself. You know what it says, and you're sticking to it. Make sure you're training your soldiers to standard. They're getting the information that they need. They're getting the training they need, and they know what to do, and they know what their rights are, and they know what their responsibilities are when it comes to any incidents that may arise. Most importantly, hopefully, the training they're getting is training we've been giving them for the last 3+ years, which is how to treat each other with dignity and respect. Next thing, make sure you know who your SARC is. Make sure you know who your victim advocate is, your VA. Those are both critical teammates. You may have them as full-time members of your staff, depending on what level you're operating as a commander. You may only have them available as collateral duty officers or non-commissioned officers. They're all competent, they're all trained, but make sure you got them and you know who they are. If you're a commander and you don't know who they are or you don't have them on your staff, you're probably wrong. If you got a part-time collateral duty of SARC or VA and you need some help immediately, just go up echelon to the first place where you can get the professional support that you need from teammates. They're there for you. I cannot overemphasize the responsibility of leaders at every echelon to make sure we are constantly reminding our soldiers and overseeing and supervising our soldiers to make sure we're treating each other with dignity and a sense of mutual respect. And we're treating each other the way we as professionals would like to be treated. All right, one other thing I want to talk about real quick, retaliation. A lot of people get concerned about the possibility if they come forward and say something, and there's a number of different ways to report. So if you're a potential victim or feel you may be a victim, I encourage you to come forward and let leadership know, and there's a couple ways to do it. You can get all the advice you need from your victim's advocate or from your SARC on the different procedures. But the reality is, if you come forward, you should not be in any way concerned about anybody retaliating against you for bringing this to the attention of the Army or to your chain of command. It's critical that you know that. Any leader who does retaliate against you has got significant challenges with the Army and frankly with me. So just make sure that you feel comfortable. If you're a potential victim out there, we want you to come forward, tell us what your concerns are so we can get after it.
Okay, so I cut the video a little bit short, but this is very, very typical of what happens. The senior leaders push out videos, they claim they have the experts, then they start talking about policies and they start talking about commanders must do this, victims don't be afraid to report retaliation, which sounds great on a video, but it comes really insincere because they really don't understand what happens all the way down to the bottom. It is two things to make a video, then it's another thing to actually set the tone. I want to know if this general actually believes in what he says. Meaning that when he's in his office or he's in a meeting and somebody makes a sexual joke or somebody says a vulgar word, how does he really react when he's around his peers or his underlings? Does he really shut them down or does he laugh along? That really sets the tone. It starts with him, then it trickles down. Believe me, nobody will use vulgar language if he doesn't tolerate it. But that's the best way to gauge whether a leader is ineffective or effective on how they actually carry themselves throughout their job or their life. So I think using the U.S. military as a model is a good thing. It teaches you what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, what works and what doesn't. I like to think as the military does a good job of bringing the discussion to the table. They do a really good job of talking. Like when I was the special agent in charge on Joint Base Lewis McChord, Lieutenant General Randy George is one of the best leaders I've ever been around. And every month he would bring all of his senior leaders in and they would talk about sexual assaults. And I think it did a world of good. And you can kind of see who really didn't buy in and who really bought in. And General George, who is a 3-star general, really bought into the program. And he really liked to talk about the discussion of sexual assault. And I think that really helped because then it started eliciting a whole bunch of discussions that stemmed off of that. You know, what vulgar language does, you know, how people become victims. And it really started opening the eyes and ears of maybe some of the commanders and command sergeant majors who just were not well versed in it. And that's where they had people like me, where we talk about criminology and victimology. So oftentimes people would ask me, Dr. Jameson, how would you make the training and awareness more real and powerful? That way society gets more bought in. And that's a good question, because I've thought long and hard about how SAPRO does it, and I hate SAPRO. I think they do it the most ridiculous way. I would make it more powerful. And for example, look at this.
He then put his hand over my mouth and kept yelling shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. And he pulled my pants down. And I think my body went numb.
I was wearing a floor-length skirt, a Tampa Bay Buccaneers t-shirt, and an olive green hooded sweatshirt and a pair of Puma sneakers when I was raped on my dorm room floor.
Around the age of 5, that's when I began to experience sexual assault.
And this guy I was looking at throughout the night came and offered me a drink.
And he was about 14, 15 years old.
The next thing I remember was being on this mattress.
And as I went to open the front door of my car, he put his hand on it and said, stop, and then grabbed me by the back of the shirt and pulled me into the back seat.
That's when he just took the icing off the cake and raped me as a child.
And he kept on telling me how much I liked it and how much I enjoyed it.
I just remember sitting in the shower for 4 hours just trying to get clean.
It took me years to forgive myself and tell myself that I did not let that happen.
Girls, boys are killing themselves.
And so we have to dispel the myth that this is a gender issue. This is a power issue.
It's a type of violence that gets in and destroys you slowly.
I didn't even think that I was lovable anymore. I'm dirty. Why would you want to be with me? I've been discarded.
There was a point in my life when the grief was just too much. I started the act of trying to hang myself, and to hear myself choking, I couldn't get past it.
I don't want a pity party this happened to me, but I got through it.
I got into therapy. I have a therapist. I'm in group therapy. It's still really, really, really hard.
It's something that has defined me as a woman today, and it will continue to define me, but in all of the amazing ways, none of the negative ways.
I want to make it very clear that every single survivor's story is different, and for me, I don't deal with this on a daily basis.
Sexual assault takes years, if not a lifetime, to heal from.
It is possible to heal. We have to do it on our own terms. It's going to look different for everyone.
Don't be scared to say I need help.
With us all together as one, we can change this.
I don't even know. No one asked for this, and it sucks that this happens. But we can all do better.
First and foremost, this has to get personal. Too many times we put up a video, we put up a PowerPoint slide, but it's another completely thing to put up a real victim of crime and have him or her talk to the audience about being sexually assaulted. That crime against their body they can never ever get rid of. So therefore, when they're standing in front of that audience, those potential offenders or potential victims of crime, and they're sharing their story, that's as real as it can get. And not too many people can tune that out. The first thing I would do is that I have to make the training a lot more personable. It has to be their mother, their father, their sister, their brother. That is the victim. No longer a stranger. They can no longer discount and completely ignore the person that's talking. That's the first step. The second step is messaging. I really like the Me Too movement. I know it's been politicized and people have been using it in negative terms, but when it was started in 2006 by Miss Burke, it was extremely genuine. It had a really good message that you are not alone. I want to make sure that it brings it back, and that Me Too means that it's me also. I have been sexually assaulted also. And also I want victims out there to know from messaging from law enforcement that we know that 8 out of 10 rapes are caused by somebody or perpetrated by somebody that knows the victim. So it is okay. It is not the stranger in the bush. It's those that you thought that were there to protect you or to love you, but they preyed upon you. And we know it, and we're going to investigate it, and we believe you. The third step is to make sure that you concentrate on the victim's point of view. You have to make society understand what happened to them. And especially, we have to make sure that society understands why they don't report. Do you remember in 2018, Dr. Christine Ford wanted to tell Congress what happened to her as she's a teenager because Judge Kavanaugh was about to be appointed to the Supreme Court. Now, politics aside, she was trying to describe what happened to her, and so unfortunately for her, she was brought in front of Congress and then she was made to testify what happened to her as a teenager. Then 330 million Americans then ripped apart and judged her story. That's exactly what's going to happen to a victim of sexual assault. They think that because society is going to judge every single detail, which they're right, they're going to do it. That's why they don't report. So I apologize. I have to do this again. But in 2018, President Donald Trump was the President of the United States. And here we have a woman who is trying to tell society what happened to her, and the most powerful man on this planet then starts to mock her. And I want you to listen to what he says.
Guilty until proven innocent. That's very dangerous for our country. That's very dangerous for our country. And I have it myself all the time. But for me, it's like a part of the job description. Let it happen to me. Shouldn't happen to him. Shouldn't happen to him. What he's going through, 36 years ago, this happened. I had one beer, right? I had one beer. Well, do you think it was, nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What neighborhood was it in? I don't know. Where's the house? I don't know. Upstairs, downstairs, where was it? I don't know. But I had one beer. That's the only thing I remember. And a man's life is in tatters. A man's life is shattered. His wife is shattered. His daughters, who are beautiful, incredible young kids. They destroy people. They want to destroy people. These are really evil people.
So first and foremost, I know everybody has an opinion on her testimony. Everybody has probably seen it by now. If you haven't, go watch it. I think it is credible. I think something happened. I'm not going to discount it because it's 36 years ago. Something happened. Whether it's the way she remembers it, I don't know. I didn't investigate it. The problem that we have is that the President of the United States is now mocking a victim of a crime. And we're going to rewatch this video, and I'm going to blur him out. And I want you to watch the people in the audience behind him, members of society, and I want you to watch how they react to him mocking a victim of a crime.
I had one beer, right? I had one beer. Well, do you think it was, nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. I don't know. What neighborhood was it in? I don't know. Where's the house? I don't know. Upstairs, downstairs, where was it? I don't know. But I had one beer. That's the only thing I remember.
So imagine you are a victim of sexual assault. And you are watching Donald Trump, the President of the United States, and all of his followers start mocking a woman who, in her opinion, was sexually assaulted 36 years ago, regardless of the time. Do you see why victims of current and future crimes don't come forward? Because did you know Dr. Ford She had handwritten letters from people out there that threatened to kill and rape and murder her and her family because she dared to testify in front of Congress about what happened to her. I don't know what that feels like, and I don't want to know what it feels like. But the problem is that everybody is seeing what's in the media or stuff like this, and they don't want to be a part of it. And that's what we desperately have to change from the point of the view of the victim. We have to change society to make sure that this stuff is no longer condoned. We have to eliminate it and make it seem like this is not okay, which is not. So if you're in law enforcement, understanding the totality of why it's important to understand victimology, as we have covered, is extremely important. We have to get back to being the voice of the victim. Because everything that they have endured and are about to endure through the criminal justice system, we have to better prepare them, and we have to better investigate these crimes. If we are mediocre and if we're faking it through our jobs, we're going to make them suffer even more. So the next case that comes in, I want you to slow down and pay attention to everything that the victim has to say, every single detail that he or she says about the subject, because there should be macro clues in there that should clue you in on what he or she is doing towards the victim. And I'm talking about vulgar language. Many offenders love to use vulgar language because A, it tests the water, they fish to see how far they can go before they escalate into the touching phase, right? And so just do me a favor, slow down, pay attention to the details, and investigate the subject first before you start even looking at the victim's discrepancies. A lot of pitfalls where a lot of detectives start concentrating, well, the victim wasn't completely accurate. No, they're not going to be completely accurate because they have emotionally and physically shut down. So give them a little bit of space. I also really want everybody involved in the criminal justice system to know what a sane kit represents, especially to a victim. When I was doing my dissertation, I would ask the detectives I was interviewing, I would ask them who accompanies the victim to do the sane kit. And a lot of the responses were the patrol officers. And I think that's an okay answer, but I asked them what really goes into it, and they didn't really know, which disturbed me a little bit. And I think that, especially in law enforcement, you should understand what your victim is going through. If you notice, I put up Chanel Miller up here. If you don't know who she is, she's the victim that was sexually assaulted by Brock Turner, the Stanford swimmer. The two guys next to her were the people that interrupted the sexual assault and came to her rescue. And she's a perfect victim because when the officer arrived, she was still unconscious. Even when she got to the hospital, she was still unconscious. And to me, that's a perfect victim because the police officer had no doubt she could not consent to what Brock was doing, right? Well, inside of her book that she wrote, she talked about what the sane kit is. So bear with me. I want to read you a little bit of what she wrote about it. I was given a limp hospital gown and escorted into another room with what looked like a dentist chair. I laid back with my legs spread apart, feet perched on stirrups. Above me was a picture of a sailboat thumbtacked to the ceiling. It seemed to have been ripped out of a calendar. Meanwhile, the nurses brought in a tray. I'd never seen so many metal tools. Beneath the peaks of my knees, I saw the three of them, the sane nurses. A small mountain range, one sitting on a stool, and with two standing behind her, all staring into me. "You're so calm," they said. I didn't know who I was calm relative to. I stared at the little sailboat above me, thinking about it floating somewhere outside this small room in a place so sunny and so far away from here. I thought, this little sailboat has a big job trying to distract me. Two long wooden Q-tips were stuck into my anus. The sailboat was doing its best. Hours passed. I did not like the chilled metal, the stiff heads of cotton, the pills, syringes, my thighs laid open. But their voices soothed me as if we were here to catch up on life, handing me a cup of neon pink pills like it was a mimosa. They kept making eye contact, every act preceded by explanation before insertion. I knew the questions they asked me were for distraction. I knew the small talk was a game we were both playing, an act they were cueing me into. Beneath the conversation, their hands were moving with urgency, the circular rim of the lens peering into the cave between my legs. Another microscopic camera snaked up inside of me, the internal walls of my vagina displayed on a screen. What is she describing? In my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, She endured a sexual assault, and it was a digital penetration, meaning that the offender used his fingers, and he was gearing up to put his penis inside of her, but he was interrupted. In my opinion, she is now describing another sexual assault, but this time legally by us, the people that want her to do the sane kit. So the point is, you have to understand what they're going through twice. One, the attack. Two, the legal attack. We want it because that's the best evidence, because hopefully we can get Brock's DNA inside of her vagina, or the semen from the offender, or any DNA around their bodies. We're going to ask them, and they're going to do it for us, as well as society, because that's who they think is going to judge them. So they think, well, if I do the sane kit, maybe I'll be believed. But that's not always the case. So the point is, remember what you're asking them to do, and then remember what they have gone through again for you. So in my opinion, it is okay to say, you know what, after they go in, or before they go into the room, I want you to say, you know what, I'm proud of you. And when they exit the room, I want you to understand what just happened to them, and just be sincere and say, you know what, I am proud of you, I am with you, I believe you, let's get after it. That may seem taboo, that you're totally against the subject and totally for the victim. I don't care. You're investigating the crime. Which way it takes you, that's the way it takes you. But the more buy-in you have with the case, I think the better detective that you will be. And the more buy-in you have with the victim, and the more care you have for the victim, I think it makes you pay attention more to the details than just dehumanizing that victim. And if you are part of the criminal justice system, I want you to challenge everything, and then I want you to challenge again. If somebody says, or the lab says, you can't do this, I want you to challenge and say, where does it say? How are you getting your information? Please cite your source. And that's not meant to be confrontational, that is meant to be professional. Medical, police, judges, everybody is not perfect. People make mistakes, and I think that we play a large part on checks and balances. So oftentimes I would ask, how long does semen live in the cervix? What's the maximum time we can do a sane kit? And most people say 4 to 5 days. Dr. Ballenstein out of California in 2014 research found seminal fluid inside the cervix up to 9 days. So that's not counting sperm count, that's not counting other factors, how many times they have sexual intercourse. And so I know that the research is being done out there, but a lot of people don't know about the research. And I want, like I said before, I want research to be replicated. I want many other Dr. Ballantynes to be doing research to see how long we can get semen in from the cervix, as well as DNA inside the vagina, DNA inside the anus. I want all of it to be done over and over again, so we in the criminal justice system can get better at catching offenders who are victimizing victims. So lastly, if you're a part of the criminal justice system, especially if you're in law enforcement, you play such a vital role on the road to defeating the rape myth culture. There's 3 things I want you to remember. 1, I need you to rise up and be heard, meaning that you can no longer just sit there and just roll over like a log on the road. You have to have a voice, and that comes with the education, because you cannot afford to be ignorant towards these topics we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. Second, you can't be afraid of alienation. Rising up is going to cause some alienation, and you can't be afraid of it. Now, I'm going to do a quick caveat. What I did is that oftentimes I would embarrass inadvertently those above me. And I realized the more passionate I became and the more knowledgeable I became, the more the people above me saw me as a threat. And if you know anything about me, that's not me. I want to be the voice of the victim, and I want to do what's best for the Army as well as in law enforcement. But my saying is that competence brings animosity to those who are mediocre. And I can't ever forget that lesson, where people that are complacent, they live in their comfort zone, and the moment that you start rocking the boat, that's when they get uncomfortable, because they realize that you know more than them. Therefore, they will do everything in their power to make sure that they hold you down. Whether it's on purpose or on accident, that's what happens. And so I guess I'm a little leery when I say don't be afraid of alienation and rise up, because there's a certain point where in politics you have to make sure that you don't embarrass the people above you. It is okay to be passionate. It is okay to rise up and don't be afraid of alienation, but just make sure that you are prepared for some potential fallout. And lastly, you got to make sure that you resist dehumanization. These men and women out there that have been sexually assaulted are human beings, and they have faced the most severe trauma from their perspective. Don't forget that. What happened to them, whether it's a touching, vulgar language, or a full-on blown rape, that is the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And I don't want you to discount anything they're saying, and I want you to believe them, because I think that makes you a better detective. And I want you to investigate, and I want you to make sure that you know that they are a part of our society, and that they're just not some piece of meat or just somebody that you don't care about. You have to have investment. I think investment eliminates dehumanization. So make sure you treat them as a human being, because that is who they are, and that they're somebody's mother, brother, father, or son. Make sure you take care of them. This is one of the hardest topics to talk about, especially in law enforcement, because it has to do with a lot about believing the victim. And that some police officers feel that if they believe the victim, well, they're biased. And I just don't believe that. I think that if you believe the victim and their story right off the bat, it just makes you investigate better. So don't be afraid to really open yourself up and then allow yourself to feel some emotion, because I think that draws in a better detective. And I think that combating the rape myth culture really starts individually, especially in law enforcement, because you set the tone. You are the gatekeeper. So the better job you do with the investigation, the better job you find the evidence, because that's the whole point of this channel, is to make sure that you're better equipped to find the evidence to make a case. Because the victims out there are relying upon us to be the best. And again, if you're mediocre and you don't really know what you're doing, you're going to cause the doubt and the scrutiny from society, and it's going to make the rape myth culture survive because you suck at your job. So the better you are, the more evidence that's there gets presented, then maybe we can start dispelling the myths and the excuses. We as society have to do a better job to start holding people accountable for their words and actions. And it all starts with law enforcement, unfortunately, because we're investigating the crimes. And to all the men and women out there that are doing the job, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Keep going, be the sheepdog that I know you can be, and continue to hone your skills to be the best of the best, because that's what we need to start combating against the rape myth culture. So thank you very much for tuning in. Be the voice of the victim. I'll see you next time. Sheepdogs!